Welcome to EdUp Smart Space, where we explore the emerging trends at the intersection of education, technology, and architecture, and how they are shaping the future of campus environments. Hello, I'm Craig Park, your host. Today, we're joined by Heather Bemis, founder and CEO of Swap Integration, a firm helping colleges and universities plan smarter, build consensus, and align their projects with what truly matters, successful outcomes. Heather, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Craig.
It's great to have you here. Great to see you again. Heather's firm is leading the planning coordination for a project we're working on at Colorado State University. Seeing the swap integration program in action has been a real eye opener for me, as it really brings all the voices to the table to ensure the client is receiving the best design coordination on a very complex project. Heather, you started your career as an architect and are now leading a firm that rethinks how projects are planned and executed. What inspired you to launch swap integration?
It's a great question, and I actually get it quite often. I practiced architecture traditionally for about 18 years before venturing into entrepreneurship, but I left the practice as a senior PM for complicated things and tech projects. The more complicated, the better. I was also a lab planner and a scheduling expert across multiple market sectors within our firm. But the real reason why I left to launch swap integration was because I saw a need in the industry where teams weren't consistently hitting design milestones, even with a really well polished professional practices firm. There were still significant misses or inconsistencies across teams. I was like, if our firm is struggling with this, I'm sure many other firms are struggling with this. And so I saw a need and I chased it.
Excellent. Was there a particular project that revealed how broken planning process can be when teams are not aligned?
I wouldn't say a specific project that showed the brokenness, but rather a specific project that showed me a better way. I was working on a project also at Colorado State. It was their new biology building where a structural engineer showcased the process of last planner system through the Lean Construction Institute. Chased it forward on that project. It was my first experience with it, but it wasn't exactly delivered in a way that designed it felt more construction-led still, though it was by a structural engineer, and I was introduced to the process, and it clicked for me, and I was like, "Ooh, I like this. I like the organization of how this could be delivered," and then I took that and continued to revamp it project over project to get it to where swap integration is now, which is truly geared towards the design phase of a project for how architects and engineers and their design consultants think.
I saw that in our interaction with you on the project at CSU, particularly with the numbers of disciplines that are involved and how complicated that is when you see it. We often look fairly myopically at the vertical we're within. Even in my practice, where I'm the technology lead for an architecture and engineering practice, it was very insightful and eye opening for me. Swap uses a lean methodology, as you mentioned, and consensus scheduling to shift project timelines from reactive to proactive. For our audience of campus planners and tech leaders, what does that look like in practice?
It's a really great question. And ultimately, it comes down to that we need to stop relying on one person's Gantt chart or static spreadsheet to dictate how a project unfolds. We need to build that schedule together as a team because everybody comes to the table with their own agenda. Architects want more time to design, contractors want more time to build, and owners want in the building yesterday, essentially. And how can we marry all three of those needs into a comprehensive schedule that works well for the entire project team? And so when you work on one person's Gantt chart that is very static, deadlines are missed and you don't know how to recover. It's not easily understandable. And so when you do it in more of a predictive planning or lean methodology, there's constant revisiting of that schedule to update and revise to continue to stay on track for those milestones while keeping everybody else's work in mind and their targets in mind.
Excellent. How do you help teams see planning as a creative and collaborative act, not just an administrative task? I know you gave us an orientation meeting to swap integration when we first started that project. Can you share that process?
Yeah, just what our goal is for swap integration. All too often, planning is just dismissed as paperwork or box checking, but really we're looking to build consensus for the entire project team. We want to know what everybody's needs are and how they can be successful. And oftentimes, for them to be successful, they require things from other people by a certain time. And that is something that needs to be understood by the entire team. So there needs to be this open space to have those asks. It's incredibly collaborative. Get the entire team in the room and you have structural sitting next to mechanical having a conversation around when a cut sheet will be available for a mechanical system, because not only does that affect structural and their loads on a building, but it acoustics and what that could do to the rest of the building, and it impacts electrical, architectural, all of that. So there is this incredible cascading effect that people don't understand when they have a Gantt chart and a milestone, but how do you get there? And so just opening up that collaborative conversation and making it interactive where you feel like you contributed to something, that's collaboration, not administration.
Absolutely. And I saw that, as I say, it was an eye opener for me. One of the first times I'd really seen the interaction between all the different disciplines in one room where we all gained knowledge and insights into the challenges we were each facing or each bringing to the table. Let's explore different campus space types. What challenges do you see when planning for academic buildings versus the residential project like we're working on or other specialized spaces like labs or performance venues?
Yeah, that's a great question because ultimately, Craig, and maybe this isn't true for what you focus on, but I would say 90% of architecture is the same across all market sectors. All buildings have walls, doors, ceilings, electrical, mechanical systems, windows, all of that stuff. 90% of the architecture is the same, and how the drawings are produced is the same. And it's that 10%. So the difference between a res hall, a lab building, an academic building, it's that 10% that sets it apart. And so the challenges for planning those different academic buildings is really just what are the constraints of the users, of the facility managers, of the site? What are the constraints of that particular building? It's not so much the building type itself, but what are the constraints that could impact the delivery of that project?
Are there scheduling or stakeholder engagement strategies that work universally, or does each project require a tailored approach?
Well, similarly to 90% of architecture is the same, 90% of my planning is structured the same. Every project has milestones and phases and deliverables and expectations for it. But really, where the intricacies come are for those specific building types, those market sector types, and the curated questions that I ask around them to try to pull information out of the users and the stakeholders and the team members. And I find myself asking what some people might consider a dumb question, or like, doesn't everybody know that already about there's three people in the back? Or like, yeah, I don't know that. And so when I can be the one who's asking the silly question because those 3 people in the back aren't going to, everybody receives more knowledge. And so it's really comes down to the questions being asked in the room, trying to pull information out of the right people.
Well, different projects have different delivery deadlines for renovation projects versus build new. Most projects have a sort of endpoint goal that the university or the campus has to occupy a building. How do you help teams plan effectively under that kind of pressure?
Well, similarly, what are the constraints? Is it around funding? Is it around student move-in? Is it around faculty turnover, changeover? What are our constraints that we're building to or design around? Oftentimes with academic buildings, funding is in place and the approvals are also in place. We we issue multiple early release packages, whether they're for procurement or they're to start grading, site clearing, demolition, all of that kind of stuff. And so a lot of the efforts that I can help with is right timing those with the contractor and the design team so that a package is issued in such a way that work can begin while design is still happening. And it's just a release of updated information that has been figured the rest of it, like while you're still choosing carpet or you're still dropping in ceiling tiles, kind of stuff. So it all comes down to the release of packages and the right timing of that.
And yeah, as you know, my work in technology planning often has some components that are part of the base building build out, but some components like the audiovisual systems that want to be a late release package just to take advantage of the latest technologies available at the time the client's going to occupy the building. So we're really sensitive to that issue of planning. For projects that have different sorts of funding, scope, and expectations that can shift midstream, how do you support teams navigating through moving targets?
There's actually a lot of value in identifying what has been contractually agreed to and making that clear for the design team and for the ownership group. Because if funding is variable, contracts are variable, and expectations for a design team are variable. And so it's like, what do we know now? What can we plan for now? And how do we do that at our very best? And then what are unknowns that we would put into a parking lot that we can solve for once more information is understood? And so I think there's a way just to say, "We know enough to do this, but not enough to do this." And this ball is now in your court to get us the information, in order to proceed, and where that line in the sand is. There are ways that you can plan for different scenarios, but at risk, right? And how much risk is a design team willing to take versus an ownership group willing to take without having clear funding in place.
Got it. So, having now experienced swap integration, you use a set of visual tools and milestone scenarios that span all of the disciplines and all of the deliverables to test assumptions before they become change orders. Can you describe that? I know that we're not doing a visual recording of this, but can you describe the swap integration board, if you will?
Yeah, it's a very oversized large format grid. We have a timeline along the top, and then each team or discipline on the project has their own lane to manage the work that they are responsible for. And it's a large matrix where we kind of establish milestones and deadlines as you're moving across. So who's responsible for what, when to release or hand off work to somebody else so that they can have enough time to complete their work to hit a milestone. And so that large matrix or oversized grid is something that we post up on a large open wall, and we move sticky notes or color coded sticky notes around, as well as little dots that are workflow tags to group different types of work together or mark something as critical path. But this large grid allows everybody to see incredibly transparently who's doing what and when and how you rely on one another to be successful for this project. And so we like to use those large matrix grids when we kick off a phase or kick off a project. It's really valuable to get the entire team in the room to do this planning session together. And on the Colorado State project that we worked on with you, Craig, one of the things that was important to this team is to do every single planning session in person, which is also very valuable, but at a very minimum, we like to plan the kickoff of a project in person. And then if it's okay, I'll take it to the digital tool is we've developed a platform, Swap PM, that essentially takes that large matrix that we put up on the wall and digitizes it by taking all of those sticky notes or action items and putting them into a grid on the on an app, a cloud-based platform that can be tracked. History can be tracked. Every move is updated. You can assign ownership, mark complete, and continue to see the transparency of how a project is progressing forward when you're not in the conference room where it was originally planned.
Yeah, you and I have had this conversation prior to this recording about how that's similar to the Kanban style project management tools that I've been using for my work on a much smaller scale. What I found interesting was that I found Kanban has worked really well for my narrow discipline. But when I trying to expand it outside of multiple disciplines, it gets very complicated. I think the SWAP PM program has spanned that need to be more inclusive of all the different disciplines and all the competing timelines and deadlines. Technology systems, AVIT, and building automation and security are often deferred or siloed, as I mentioned earlier. Other technologies and other disciplines have similar problems. What happens to the project in planning when that happens? Are there challenges or problems that that causes?
Well, if it's an afterthought, it's an afterthought, right? If it's not collaboratively planned into the schedule, it's an add-on that oftentimes loses momentum because the design team was planning towards this, but now they need to back up and account for this, which reduces the effectiveness of their coordination in their drawings. And if you're adding in a discipline late, just not going to be incredibly cohesive and everybody's drawings are going to be a little bit out of touch. And you're also going to be adding in new scope or new information that will trickle through the coordination of the drawings. And that's where you get RFIs and change orders and schedule delays and all of that in when you get into construction.
Similarly, the next question really was, what strategies does SWAP PM and SWAP integration address value engineering? The trap where desired features or functions get cut because of either lack of budget or lack of insight into what the budget actually should be.
Well, since we don't control the purse or the pocketbook, and we only help with right timing of certain events, we know that when a cost estimate happens, it's value and 9 times out of 10, there will be a key exercise of some sort at whatever phase you are in design. The best way that we can help, and it's not specifically for AVIT, but is to make sure they're giving themselves enough time to account for all of the decisions that need to be at the table and the right stakeholders are in the room. Like that is the biggest thing is making sure the right people are in the room for the right meeting on the right so that a decision can be made and then progressed forward with the rest of the schedule. So it's really a non-answer to your question, but it's really comes down to the right timing of getting the right people at the table to make
Well,
those
and
decisions
we
together.
address it by looking at past trends in terms of what we expect for incremental cost increases. We also, one of the reasons, as I mentioned earlier, was that we're planning for technology that may not be available yet at the time we're starting the planning process.
Yeah.
When those in the audience, many who are familiar with this, is that when you start a project, especially ground up, it's probably close to 3 years from the day you start to the day they walk in the building. And in technology circles, that could be 2 generations of new tech. So that we have to use a little bit of a crystal ball, both on what the tech is coming and what the tech pricing differentials might be. The good news is that for the most part, things are getting faster, better, and cheaper over time as opposed to more expensive. And that helps our clients keep that budget in line. How does your planning process incorporate other vendors, particularly in spaces where technical performance is critical, like active learning classrooms or lecture halls or labs? Because you, as a former lab planner, you must have seen similar issues with lab equipment.
Yeah, if there are vendors onboarded early enough, we'd love to have them in the room for our planning sessions. Oftentimes they can't make a commitment to a particular vendor unless it is a proprietary to that campus. But if it's known and they're available to be in the room, we'd love to have their expertise join the planning process and contribute to help the whole team coordinate the scope that they're bringing forward because gosh, that industry knowledge that comes from a vendor is so much more than any design team member or consultant could bring because they have the current trends available for them for their particular piece of information. And it is so much more valuable than I think I need about 2 weeks to review this. It's like, no, actually, I need 4 circuits here and I know exactly where they go because of X, Y, or Z. And how to plan that in. If they're in the room, we are the more the merrier at that table.
Excellent. With artificial intelligence, the Internet of Things, and cybersecurity top of mind in campus design, how does the SWAP platform help teams future proof their planning timelines for technologies that are still emerging?
It's hard because we help with future proofing as more of a concept. SWAT PM would keep your schedule available, but typically once it's handed over to a contractor, they take it and run with it. And that's really where the next level of information goes is onto the contractor for how it's delivered and managed through facilities. But as far as like the future proofing effort, there's a lot of future proofing that can happen in design. As you mentioned, you have to design for 3 years from now with the crystal ball. You do the same thing with labs with open conduits and extra circuits and leaving space and um, floor boxes that are blinked off and stuff like that. You can account for a lot of those things during design, but AI and cybersecurity and all of that stuff, I feel like that is more campus specific in how it's implemented as opposed to predictive planning for a specific project.
You've written about using AI to support your work, not replace it. Where do you see AI being most valuable in the campus planning project process?
Well, I mean, you can see it with GPTs out there already doing some predictive analysis, and we're looking at implementing are actually actively and have implemented the first start of an AI chatbot that can offer suggestions for schedule implementation with the goal of having it review and predict the effectiveness of your schedule or where you can condense it or looking at a master plan and the best timing around constructing or implementing different types of buildings. But we're really looking at implementing AI into SWAP to be very industry specific and get very, very smart on our industry of design and construction, focusing primarily on design and their design consultants, but using AI to help do better predictive planning for project schedules to how can we move up timelines or condense timelines and how can we use different technologies to not replace us, like you said, but increase our speed or efficiency or coordination. How can we improve our coordination to prevent delays that come in construction?
Great. I know looking back at episode 12, with Julie Johnston of Praxis AI was a guest on the show. Praxis AI has a agentic platform specifically designed for higher education that provides that chatbot is too small of a term because it's really much
Yeah,
broader than that, but provides that data knowledge and an interactive component and an analytic component. And I'd love to introduce the two of you because I think you find a lot of
that'd be
synergies
great.
between what you're doing at Swap and what Praxis is doing on the agentic side. And in both these conversations, I think this is my next question is the importance of human in the loop. You mentioned that is that what are the most important parts of the human in the planning process?
But it is the number one thing because the human is delivering, not an AI, right? A human has other constraints in life, other projects that AI may not know about, right? And a vacation or a sick day that AI just
Or unexpected surgery?
unexpected surgery or your child breaks their arm or
Yeah.
something like that that you need to be out for and you can't hit a specific internal milestone. I mean, there's often times that you can delegate to other members of your team, but it's like how can you pivot and how can you still manipulate your work and coordination with other people to still hit that milestone? AI can give you a response of how to abbreviate or make something a little bit more efficient, but they're not the ones delivering and they're not the ones adapting to real world. So there's also decisions that come down from the top that need to be integrated and thought through. And is this the best thing for this project at this time? And having that evaluation with all of the known human encounters that you've had with different users and stakeholders, how you integrate that into the schedule, there's a lot of thought that needs to go into even before you ask AI to help assist you in implementing that into your schedule. So the human factor will never go away. And there's always person to person coordination that for solving problems. And all of that plays into the predictive planning process as well.
As a woman-owned business, you're modeling inclusive leadership in a field where that's very rare. What kind of culture are you building at Swap, and how does that translate into the teams you facilitate?
That's a good question. Well, I've been kind of running as mostly a one woman show. And so how I show up is the culture. But we do have a couple of team members who work with us that it's all about the team to find the best solution for them. When at the end of the day, we want everybody's voice to be heard, their problems to be on the table to be solved, and the milestones hit. And that's good for the owner, that's good for the design team, and so our job and how we show up to projects is how can we jump in and be an incredible team player alongside you? Our job is not to take over or run the show in place of you. It is to come alongside you and assist. And we've had the most success when the project team allows us to do that. And I don't know if that answers your question,
It
Craig,
does.
but
Have you been doing this now for how long? Swap started.
since almost 4 years, but 3.5 solid years.
Can you show measurable results from your experience on the projects where you've had influence?
Yeah. Not data specific to a team, but results as more on the construction side as a result for the planning, predictive planning process being so tight allows construction to start and follow their timeline. So the majority of our projects, if the design team is in control and there's not jurisdictional impacts that are slowing it down or owner changes in scope late in the game, if the design team is in control, 9 times out of 10 we deliver on time or early. Majority of the time is early. We are actually hired by architects, contractors, and directly from owners. But when contractors use us on project teams, the design sees us as a different type of a partner. Like we're not on their team, but we're assisting their team. I don't know how to explain it, but we're kind of an insurance policy for the contractor to help the design team deliver so that they can get to their general conditions. For the architects, we're like an internal specialist, an expert to take away the cat herding from the project manager and helping them create a roadmap for the entire team. So it reduces that bottleneck. And for an owner group, we help with stakeholder engagement, design team collaboration, and you've got multiple parties, stakeholders, design team, contractor, facilities, engineers who all play into this. And when everybody has a schedule that the owner is invested in, and they can agree to dates of when they're issuing amendments or doing reviews or making decisions, the rest of the team feels comfortable with their portion of contributing to that schedule. And so, regardless of who hires us, everybody feels a different benefit of having us on their team. But I want to stress that we are not there to replace, we're there to assist.
Right. I saw that myself, having worked now 40 plus years and seen over the last couple of decades the growth of program managers being brought in to assist an owner in the management of processes and CM at risk becoming a more preferred delivery model where the CM in theory is doing some part of what I would call the swap model, but not as effective as swap has been and is. I think you deliver a really unique value proposition that I hope more and more of our clients and other clients listening take a look at because I found it really successful in terms of achieving that visibility and consensus driven decision making from all parts, from the client, from the designers, engineers, and the contractor to reach the part where we can start building that building.
Can I
Go ahead.
add something to that?
Yes,
Yeah,
please.
I appreciate you saying that because we are a brand new consultancy. I don't know of anybody out there that's focusing specifically on the design phase with a background similar to mine who is trying to improve this process to manage or eliminate that need in the industry of hitting milestones. There's all these outside influences that are impacting the delivery of projects, and how can we better manage that so we can be more consistent in our delivery? Architecture is not a new profession. It's been going on for hundreds of years. And I think the hardest part though is it's hard to get this profession to think differently um, about a new way of doing things. When CAD came out, there was a shift, right? It took a while to adopt. When Revit came out, there was a shift. It took a while to adopt. I think similarly with AI, it's going to be a while to adopt in the industry. And I am not immune to that. I'm part of that too. I will like swap integration will be delayed in adopting, but the people who have experienced it, such as yourself, our clients, the majority of our clients, we have some really strong clients and we work with them over and over and over again. Once they've experienced how you can deliver a project with swap, it's really hard to go back to a traditional way of doing it.
So, a series of quick questions. What's the most common planning pitfall you wish teams would avoid?
Or I've always done it this way. And so I will continue to do it this way. I'd say that is a very common one and which leads to disengagement. That is a very common collaborative planning. Otherwise, general, even when it comes to a Gantt chart, a pitfall could be not allowing enough time for review and responding to comments.
What's been the most rewarding project experience? So,
Well, based on my experience of a practicing architect, the more complicated, the better. I actually worked on a airport terminal in the state of New York that had 5 and then became 6 bid packages delivered in a very staggered approach that all cascaded upon one another. That was a very rewarding project because of the intricacies, and there was 45 different disciplines involved in that project. So between the number of players involved in the project, the number of deliverables, and the intense coordination that had to happen, the planning sessions, you could just see the light bulb go on, consultants and the teams, and they're at first, they may have been like, "What are we here for an all-day planning session?" And then they left like, "Wow, I actually know how I'm going to deliver this project." And just seeing the switch click on, incredibly rewarding.
right, what is one technology tool that you can't do without?
SWAT PM, obviously, because that is actually how I manage all of our projects now. I used to use a large format Bluebeam piece that was the precipice for what SWAT PM is now. But aside from that, I'd say just a just a straight up whiteboard. I use a whiteboard on the daily and post-it notes on the daily, but from technology standpoint, it's gotta be SWAT PM.
As we close, what advice would you give higher education leaders preparing for a new capital project?
Plan early. Plan as much as you can, as early as you can, because there are so many factors that weigh into it from internal bureaucracy and review processes to jurisdictional implications, whether you're your own HJ or you have to work with the city or an adjacent district. Plan early there, get your design team on, or all of the team members on early, even if their scope is limited, because the more voices you have at the table gives you more comprehensive delivery of a potential schedule and the different potential pitfalls that could come along the way to help you plan early.
Excellent. And for those who want to explore Swap's approach or work with your team, where should they start?
Swapintegration.com or swappm.com. We have our services spelled out on there, or I'm not sure in the show notes. Have you share my email? They can reach out to me directly.
I will.
Um, I'm also on LinkedIn, Swap Integration.
At EdUp Smart Space, we like to end with a signature question: what comes after what comes next? In other words, looking out on a longer horizon, how should we think about aligning people, space, technology, and planning? What does the future look like if you look 10 years down the road?
10 years down the road, I think that 90% is going to be more solidly figured out. The order of workflow of how teams collaborate together, and then you plug the people in to do the work. The work is already determined for you. And really, it's the timeline of how you can compress it or how it might need to expand based on the other jurisdiction, all of that stuff. Uh, but I think AI is going to be a huge contributing factor into taking some of the administrative pieces off of team members' plate, probably not solving problems like architects and consultants and designers do, but taking more of the administrative, like annotating a detail, right? You can speed up once the detail is figured out. Let's compress the annotation portion of that schedule, which could compress our overall design phase schedule. And using the tools that are available to us that we have gotten smart on in the next 10 years to deliver projects faster.
Great. Thank you, Heather Bemis, for sharing your insights and vision.
Thank you, Craig. Appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
And thank you to our listeners for joining us. I'll drop a link to Swap Integration and Heather's contact information in the show notes. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, and share it with your network. As always, we thank the team at EdUp Experience for their guidance and support. You can learn more at edupexperience.com. I'm Craig Park, and this has been the EdUp Smart Space. Until next time, let's keep building smart spaces together.